I've just arrived on the island of Kea, and right now I'm making my way to the Ancient Karthea archaeological site. Earlier this morning, shortly after boarding the ferry, I suddenly heard my first and last name being called over the loudspeaker. Uh-oh. I headed downstairs to find out what was going on, only to discover that I had handed over the wrong ticket. The ticket I gave them was actually my return ticket with a different ferry company, Triton. The ferry I was traveling on this morning was operated by Hellenic Seaways. I quickly dashed back to my door, which was parked like a sardine among dozens of other vehicles on the car deck. Somehow, I managed to squeeze my way in, open the door, retrieve the envelope, and find the correct ticket. Everything worked out in the end, and before long, we were on our way. Sadly, I didn't make it to the Ancient Karthea archaeological site, even though it was only about an hour's hike down the mountain. The trail itself wasn't difficult, but there were so many spider webs stretched across the path that the hike quickly became very unpleasant for me. To make matters even more stressful, I kept hearing rustling and rattling sounds in the bushes nearby, either lizards or snakes moving at high speed. Whatever they were, I wanted to get myself off that trail. Reptiles have probably been my least favorite vertebrates ever since I was a child. Despite the trail's impressive 4.8 star rating on All Trails app, I simply wasn't enjoying the experience. I think I was only about 20 minutes away from the archaeological site when I reached a point where I had to be honest with myself. I decided to turn around, hike back up to the trailhead, and find something else to do. At the end of the day, it's not worth continuing if the journey itself is making me uncomfortable. The climb back up was definitely a good cardio workout, but I felt relieved once I reached the start of the trail again. As I was leaving, I passed a German family with a young child who were just starting the hike. I guess everyone has a different comfort zone, and that's perfectly okay. Hiking was never really one of my hobbies until the pandemic. Before then, I was more of a gym rat and knew very little about outdoor activities beyond going for walks in the city. So today, I decided to give myself some credit. I gave it a try, listened to my instincts, and chose to move on to something else, something less stressful. And most importantly, something with no spider webs ending up on my head. There's not that many people on board today, so it should be a nice quiet ride back to Lavrio. I'm traveling on the Triton ferry this time, making my way back to the mainland after my day on Kea. After a busy day of exploring and a hike that didn't quite go according to plan, I'm looking forward to sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying the journey across the Aegean. Sometimes a peaceful ferry ride is exactly what I need. That's the Agios Yorgos Church on top of the hill that I just climbed.
We would like to thank you for your attention in choosing to travel with us. We would like to thank you for your attention in choosing to travel with us.
As we make our way back to Lavrio, the island you see across the water is Makronissos, an uninhabited island with a very sad history. I didn't know this at first. While I was taking photos from the ferry, a young Greek woman approached me and explained that thousands of left wing political activists were once detained there. What looked like a quiet, deserted island suddenly took a complete different meaning. We chatted briefly. She works at a cafe on Kea and was heading back to the Greek mainland for the weekend. Moments like this remind me that some of the most interesting things I learned while traveling come from conversations with locals, not guidebooks. I checked out of my lovely guest house in Lavrio early this morning because I wanted to visit the Vorres Museum, which is what you see right now, located in the suburban village of Paiania, not far from Athens International Airport. The museum has fairly limited opening hours during the week, so I had to carefully organize my itinerary to make sure I wouldn't miss it. I actually discovered this place while browsing on Google Maps one evening, and it immediately caught my attention. The museum was founded by Ian Vorres, an art collector from a wealthy Greek family. The visit is divided into two parts. The first section can be explored independently, while the second consists of a guided tour of Ian Vorres' home and private collection. Unfortunately, photography and filming are not allowed inside the house. Ian Vorres moved to Canada, where he studied economic and political science at Queen's University before earning a master's degree in philosophy and psychology from University of Toronto. He later worked as a journalist and returned to Greece in 1964. By then, Athens had undergone significant changes. Many of its neoclassical buildings had disappeared, replaced by polykatikias, which is the modern apartment buildings that now dominate much of the cityscape in Athens. Vorres purchased the land here in Paiania when the area was still largely farmland. Wanting to recreate the atmosphere of the homeland he had left behind, he hired craftsmen to restore and expand the property using traditional Greek architectural elements. He was passionate about preserving objects that others considered outdated or useless. His collection includes statues, religious icons, ceramics, glassware, millstones, and even stone anchors believed to date back to the era of the Battle of Salamis. According to his grandson, people would line up to sell their useless items to Ian Vorres. He would then give them a new life. An old olive grinding millstone, for example, was transformed into a coffee table in his house. Vorres' home became a museum in 1983, and after his passing in 2015, its stewardship was taken over by his grandson Nectarios Vorres. My Greek friend, the same friend who joined me on my trip to Chios and who highly recommended that I visit Kithnos Hora, she told me that she once attended a wedding here. Walking around in these beautiful grounds, I can immediately see why this would be such a perfect venue for a special occasion, such as a wedding. The gardens are expansive and meticulously maintained, and there's even a cafe where visitors can sit back and enjoy the surrounding greenery. It feels less like a traditional museum and more like a peaceful retreat, where art, history, and nature come all together in perfect harmony. So, as you can see, I'm back in Aegina today, cycling around the island near the main port. My original plan was actually to go to Agistri and spend the day cycling there, but I made a big mistake. I didn't buy my ferry ticket in advance. That's completely on me. I wanted to use my Wise debit card instead of Visa credit card because the exchange rate is usually better. I was under the impression that Ferry Hopper didn't accept the Wise debit card, but I later found out that it was not true at all. Since it was a sunny Sunday morning, it seems a lot of people had the same idea as I did and wanted to escape Athens for the islands. Because the crossing to Agistri is so short, I assumed I could simply show up at the ticket office early and buy a ticket. Well, I was totally wrong. I arrived in Paiania at 8 in the morning. Despite there being ferries throughout the day, almost every ticket to Agistri was already sold out. There was only one sailing left with available seats, departing at 10 a.m., but there were no return tickets for the same day. Since I'm flying home tomorrow, that wasn't an option. I've actually been to Agistri twice before. The first visit was last June during a heat wave with a Greek friend and her two teenage children. By the way, this is not the same friend who came with me to Chios. No, it's another friend. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy that trip very much. I hadn't rented a bike, and the kids spent most of the day arguing and shouting between themselves. My friend didn't seem to be bothered by it, but for someone without children, I found it quite exhausting. So I returned alone in September, rented an e-bike, and had an absolutely wonderful time. I loved Agistri so much that I had planned to visit for a third time on this trip, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. The lady at the ticket office suggested Aegina instead, since tickets were still available and it's even closer to Paiania. So that's how I ended up here today. After buying my ticket, I still had about an hour and a half before departure, so I wandered around Paiania. And since it was a Sunday morning, the area was fairly quiet. I also stopped by the beautiful Holy Trinity Cathedral. Unfortunately, I was wearing shorts, so I couldn't go inside, but I enjoyed admiring it from the outside. The ferry itself was completely full. When I say full, I mean every seat inside was taken, leaving only the outdoor deck. It was a little chilly out there, especially since I wasn't dressed warmly enough. I ended up sitting near several families traveling with young children. At one point, I offered my seat to one of the mothers so she can sit closer to her kids, but she kindly declined and told me not to worry, and she told me that they were doing just fine. That was very nice of her, I thought. While I was on board the ferry, I called a bike rental shop in Aegina to reserve an e-bike. Surprisingly, the data was working. There was only one rental shop on the island that offers them, and unfortunately, all of the e-bikes had already been rented out for the day. The owner was very apologetic and explained that it had been an exceptionally busy Sunday. To be honest, I wasn't surprised. The weather was beautiful, and I think a lot of people had the same idea: get out of Athens and spend the day on one of the nearby islands. It almost felt as though half of Athens had decided to escape to the Saronic Islands that morning. I was a little disappointed at first because I've become quite fond of exploring the Greek islands by e-bike. They're a great way to cover a lot of ground, especially on a day trip where you're trying to make the most of your limited time. Since I couldn't make it to Agistri, I was hoping that at least I would be able to enjoy Aegina by e-bike. But after taking a close look at the map, I realized that the route I wanted to ride from Aegina town to Perdika and back is relatively flat, so I decided not to let the lack of an e-bike ruin my day. In the end, I rented a regular bicycle instead, and it worked out perfectly fine. It may not have been an electric motor, but sometimes it's nice to slow down a little and enjoy the journey at a most relaxed pace. And now I'm cycling back to the main port. I'll be returning this bike shortly and then heading to a place that sells souvlaki. I'm absolutely starving, and after a nice bike ride around Aegina, a warm chicken souvlaki sounds like a perfect reward. Sometimes it's the simple things: good food, a bit of exercise, fresh sea air, and a beautiful Greek island that make for a great day. If there's one lesson I've learned from today, it's this: don't wait until the last minute to buy ferry tickets, especially on the weekends. But even when plans don't work out as exactly as expected, they often lead to a different adventure. Instead of Agistri, I ended up having a wonderful day cycling around Aegina, and honestly, I can't complain about it at all. Last year, I didn't get the chance to see the inside of this chapel, so now is the perfect opportunity to finally have a look inside. Apparently, this is one of the oldest churches on the island, which was built in the 17th century by craftsmen from Paros, which explains its distinctly Cycladic architecture style, even though Aegina belongs to the Saronic Islands. It's an interesting reminder of how connected the Greek islands have always been. Standing here, you can clearly see the influence of Cycladic design in the church's simple lines like whitewashed walls and elegant proportions.
Toujours encore plus en fait.